Good morning and happy Saturday. I don't think you can tell too much from this angle, but it is so beautiful where I am. I'm currently in Michigan, and it's like the perfect amount of leaves that have fallen and still on the trees. And just like the change of colors and everything is perfection. It's my favorite season in the Midwest. Probably everywhere, but I say that because if you've lived elsewhere, you know that the fall in other areas, especially like the West Coast, is very different in my experience. Anyway, today I am going to look at some open houses and want to kind of bring you along. I can't film anything inside them, but just talk a little bit about my experience with home buying and what I've learned. I work in accounting, and I've worked in real estate accounting. That includes looking at all of the documents for when people buy and sell homes. And it's given me a lot of insight as someone who's passionate about personal finance, and as someone who home ownership is not something that was in my family until my generation. As a lot of you know who have been around, you know that I really like to share the stuff that's taken me so long to figure out and learn. And I think that knowledge is power. I believe that every one of us is absolutely capable and able to get to a place with their own personal finances where they feel really proud and empowered. And regardless of what that actually looks like, it's not about numbers, but really just educating yourself on personal finance, on budgeting, on home buying, things like that. I'm going to bring you along. And one of the things I want to talk about specifically in this video are the differences of buying a 30-year mortgage and a 20 will be my example, but it applies to 20, 10, 15, whatever you want to do, but just the significance in what those numbers actually look like, and the fact that there is actually a real possibility that it's a lot more attainable than you think it is. So we're going to start by going to one of my favorite coffee shops in the area. I've been going here at least once a morning on the weekends for the last month or two in this home buying process, because they have an indoor-outdoor seating area. The weather has been perfection for sitting outside. So I like to go and get a coffee, bring a book, and reflect on houses that I maybe want to buy, ones I've looked at. A couple times I've put in offers, and so I've sat there to kind of just move through those emotions of that, what comes with that. And sometimes just reading my book, I think it's so important that we disconnect from all of it. I know for me, when I find times of quiet where I'm not constantly like on and thinking about my life and my plans and what I need to do, and just being so like analytical in that masculine energy, that by allowing myself to just kind of slow down and be in more of that feminine energy and to receive and to know, like, trust the process more, it's so powerful. And one of the ways I do that is going and sitting outside, being in nature, at a coffee shop, reading a book, just allowing myself to have an experience like that. What is a way that you like to do that? I'm curious. I have a lot of different things that I like, and I think it definitely moves with the seasons, but that is one of mine. I apologize for this really bad lighting, but I want to get on here and let you know that I didn't end up filming any of my open houses because, well, I don't think you're supposed to, and it ended up just being a really busy day. Then I went to a few more on Sunday as well. It just was, I don't know, it was just a really interesting weekend. I am going to update you at the end of this video on something that did happen with one of the houses, but I'm not going to say it yet because I want to talk to you first about the difference between the 20 and the 30-year mortgage. And I also want to preface that if you're in a situation where you can only do the 30, then do that and feel so empowered and amazing about that. Because if it's something you really want to get to at some point, you can also refinance, and a lot of times it's worth the cost of refinancing for the amount that you're going to save in the long run, especially if interest rates change and especially if you put equity into your house. So keep that in mind. When I already filmed the part where I'm talking about the 20 and 30-year mortgages. I may speak to it as if, you know, you only want to do the 20, and when possible, definitely do that. But I also realize that if you're a first-time home buyer, sometimes that is just not an option. If you're a first-time home buyer, that's a big freaking deal, especially if you are doing it completely on your own, meaning maybe you and your partner, but that you're doing it with your own hard-earned, saved money. That is huge. That's how I've had to get to it myself, and I understand the work that that takes. And so sometimes we have to get our foot in the door, and that means buying that first home or a home within a certain price point at the 30-year mortgage, and then in time maybe saying, okay, it's time to adjust that. That's my little preface, my little side note before I get into this. Okay, so when it comes to a 20 and a 30-year mortgage, unless you are somebody who has bought a few houses, or you work in accounting, or just for some reason you kind of nerd out on this stuff, then you might not understand the significance between getting a 20 and a 30-year mortgage. Or you may not even realize that you have some subconscious belief that tells you that you have to get the 30 because of wherever you're at financially. So I want to give you a few things, few pointers to think about when you are buying your next home or your first home, because this is just as applicable for a first-time home buyer. And so most people are going to go in and do the 30-year mortgage. When a lender sends you a breakdown of what your approximate closing costs are going to be, and you can ask them from the start before you've done anything, you can give them an idea of the house price point, things like that. You will also be sent a document that will show you what that looks like for the 30-year mortgage in this example, because that is going to be what makes up your principal and interest payment. Usually at the very last page or so, there's a breakdown of how much interest you're actually going to be paying. And in most cases, a 30-year mortgage, let's say your house is $200,000, you will most likely spend almost another $200,000 in the 30-year span of paying for that house. Now, the reason this matters is because, well, for many reasons, you're pretty much doubling what you're spending. But when you take out a mortgage, at the very beginning, you're putting majority of your payment is going to the interest. It's not even going to the principal of your house. Even if you pay it off in 20 years, when you get a 30-year mortgage, you're still paying more in interest ultimately because it's heavier on the top side, the start side. So the reason why it's so important to consider the 20-year is that most fair lenders are going to give you a lower interest rate on a 20-year mortgage than they would on the 30, because it's less of a risk for them. They're not loaning you money for 30 years, they're only loaning you money for 20 years. However, I have seen a few lenders where they're a little bit scammy and they increase the 20% more than the 30 as an incentive for you to take the 30%. I wouldn't go with that lender, personally. Now, what is so important, two key things here to know about considering the 20-year. One is that it is almost always, depending on the price point of your home, it's only about $100 to $200 more a month in your payment when you choose the 20-year. I prioritize this. If I can only afford a home based off of a 30-year mortgage, but I can't afford the 20, then the home is out of my price point. That's just me. Unless I have a different approach, I realize there are exceptions to this, but overall, that is very important to me. The other thing is that when you look at that same page that shows you the breakdown of the total interest that you're going to pay on the lifetime of your loan, as opposed to the 30-year where you're paying pretty much double the cost of the home, on a 20-year, you're paying significantly less, sometimes half the amount of interest than you would. Personally, I believe a home is a debt. When you're living in that home, you owe hundreds of thousands of dollars on that house. That is not an investment as long as you're paying on it. And as long as, even if you sell it and have to get another one, you still then owe on the next one. Maybe it helps you level up and get a more expensive home because you've earned some equity. But ultimately, as long as you're paying on your house, it's a debt. It's not an asset. So for me, I want to know within my budget every single month when I'm considering how much I can afford on a home, it's going to include a 20-year mortgage. It's going to include a certain amount that I am saving and a certain amount that I'm investing every year. Because if I only have one home and I don't have any investment properties, if I'm only talking about a primary residence, then I never can really, it takes a really long time to see the equity, to be able to use the equity in your home. Yes, you might pull the cash out, but you're still then paying on your mortgage. This is a really simple thing that makes such a difference, that I feel when you know is just like, wow, this is such important information when it comes to home buying, especially if you're someone who is mindful of the numbers and how much you're actually spending and not being house poor and being able to do other things as well. You know, one of my biggest incentives is just to share with people what I've learned that I was not taught, and to help kind of make it so that some of this stuff isn't so hard for you or doesn't have to be. I think that sharing knowledge is so important and powerful and empowering. And so that is one of my intentions of sharing this with you, because now that I'm looking for a home by myself, it's a very different experience than when I bought my first home with somebody else. There's a lot more to keep track of. There's a lot more to consider. But just know that even if you're not a math person or a numbers person and you've never bought a home, or you have no experience with this or no one to talk to, you can absolutely do this, and you can be informed and you can be knowledgeable about the decisions that you're making and the information that you're getting. And so I hope that this helps you in your decision making. And if you're in the process of buying a home or you look into this yourself, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you about your own experience with this. Okay, I just have to document this. I submitted another offer, and for some reason this one feels different. I am having a slight panic, for sure. But I'm also like, don't want to be in this space anymore. And I need a place to live. And I'm employed, so I can buy a house right now. You know, these things I've been thinking about, that rather than future tripping or being too caught up in like, I will admit I have been in like absolute what is the worst thing that could happen if I buy a house, and making making decisions from there. And it's kind of making me crazy. Like, it's driving me nuts. And I am looking at a price point that is the same as anything I would have to pay to rent a place. And so, although renting gives me the opportunity to just pick up and go if I want, owning obviously is such a great way to invest my money. And like I've said, I know that owning a home is not an investment as long as you're the one paying and you owe on it, but I'd still rather it be going into my own home for the future of it becoming an investment. And one of the reasons I put the offer on this one is because I'm not looking for my forever home, but I feel like it's such a good opportunity because of the location. And a few facts I'll share with you now is that the house is pretty much fully updated. I'm talking roof, water heater. Actually, it's got some fancy modern water heater, furnace, all of that. It's small, so the utilities are low. But like I said, everything is new, and the only thing I have to do is just cosmetic updates, which I want to do. It's walking distance in the town I like to be. The two biggest compromises I made on this are the yard size, but it has a yard, and it doesn't have a driveway. And that's a big concern for me. But I've also been to this house a couple times now, and there's always parking right in front. And honestly, with this price point and the location, and I've looked at a lot of houses that have what I want, but the location is really poor, and I spend my weekends walking if I can. So for me, I feel like all of these things are important, and I get a lot of stress when I know that a house that I've put an offer in on or I'm interested in is something where I know, like, I never get all three of the big ticket items with the roof, water heater, and furnace, you know, at my price point. Usually one of them needs to be updated. And those things stress me out. And usually the kitchen isn't what I want, or the bathrooms and things like that. And I went to another one yesterday, and it would have been for sure $25,000 cash just to pretty much live in it with the plumbing and stuff. There were just a lot of things that could be easy to miss, but I went back with my agent, and it was just so obvious. And so this house, there is nothing I have to update. There is nothing that has to be fixed. There's no cement driveway that needs you know, fixing up, or basement that's leaking, or anything like that. And right now in this moment, that's really important to me. And it has just the right amount of features for me to be able to go and put my touch on it and make it super beautiful. So we'll see what happens. A part of me is like, please do not accept my offer, because I'll have like a panic. If you've bought a house, you know that feeling, or even if you've just put offers in. And I'm doing this alone, which is making me like, oh my gosh. But another part of me is like, if they don't, then I'm still in this weird in-between season I've been in for so long now. And that's another reason why I was like, I'm just gonna do this. And the other thing I'll mention is that I went and looked at this like a month ago when it first came on the market. And I loved the inside and the location, but I was like, no driveway, you know, like no way. And didn't like the yard size. But a month after seeing like so many houses and really sitting down and realizing the cost that it would require from me, and the fact that I am not buying this house to live in forever. The minimum I have to live in it is a year. And once I have a year in, I can leave and rent it out, because that's what you can do as if you buy it as a primary residence. I just feel like going through it again. And I only went because a friend of mine keeps sending me this listing. And I was like, well, hey, they're having another open house. Do you want to just go by? Then I saw an agent who I'd seen the day before, ironically, doing this open house. I had gone to another one he was at. And so, yeah, now I'm just like, oh my gosh. There's just, it's seriously one of those things where it's like, I like how I feel inside, you know? I like how it feels in there. And a lot of the other houses I'm looking at, even if they're close to the same price point, they need so much work, because where I'm at are these beautiful old craftsmen. They're like my favorite kind of house, but to get one that's fully updated and remodeled, it's like at least double what I'm looking to pay right now. So that's partly probably why my search has taken so long. Freaking out for sure, staying busy, just cleaned my car, cleaning this room, doing what I can. I probably won't even hear anything tonight, but that'll make sleep worse. I don't sleep after I put offers in, but also the idea of being able to like maybe host Thanksgiving and start actually applying all of my Pinterest saved folders and things is so exciting. And the feeling of going in there with my dog and just being like, we did it, bud, you know, like this is ours. No one can take this, no one can mess with this, no one can, you know, it's just ours. And I think that I really need that right now. I'll talk about that more in another vlog, but I learned a lot in the last few months how important a home is to me, and why I'm so passionate about the actual design and the feel of a space, and why I'm so interested in helping other people do it as well. So yeah, my big things are like houses and personal finance. So we're gonna get more into that, and of course traveling. But I'm just gonna share more about these things too. But anyway, by the time you see this, I might already know. And if it's a no, I'll be cool. I've been like, okay, that is the alignment from the universe. That's a big thing for me right now. But it's the anticipation.